Hey guys, yeah, it's my hope that everyone out there in the blogosphere is doing well. And I would like to take a moment and reflect on some things I'm reading for my research on disability theology. It's interesting because I'm reading right now Henry Nouwen, and it's largely in a critical vein, not harsh, but sort of looking at his experience of disability and where our community can go from now and Vanier on to next steps. But in the course of that, I'm also getting to soak up some great wisdom from Henry Nouwen and John Vanier and others like that. And right now I'm reading On the Road to Daybreak, or Road to Daybreak, his journal during his time in La Forestier in France, one of the large communities that he kept for a year. And I was reading today specifically a passage where he talks about his temptation to uh, stroll through the halls of power rather than remaining in the house of God. And for him, it was in the context of being invited by a senator friend of his to Washington, D.C., which led him to a deeper reflection on his own temptation towards power and towards prestige instead of remaining in the house of the Lord. And one of the things he said is even holy acts like giving retreats and writing books of spiritual wisdom and doing things in the general course of his ministry life could lead him towards a temptation to do those things for power and prestige and not focus on the interior life and the holiness of surrendering everything in the house of the Lord. And I got to thinking about how consciously aware that made me of the research I'm doing, which ultimately is about empowering the handicapped to not always see themselves as vessels of brokenness, but as fully identified and fully empowered creatures within God's kingdom. But not only my research, it got me to think about the state of the world around us today. And I think a large part of the reason we are grappling with such issues we are in the world today is the way that we in the church have responded, even in some seemingly good attempts to dialogue with the world from a position of wanting to have power and wanting to maintain a certain dynamic of power and influence. And ironically, the Robin Williams situation has really brought this home to me, or brought this home to me during my reading and prayer today. There was a church that I will not name that I heard about recently who asked all those who were struggling with suicidal thoughts and ideations or ideas to stand, and the folks in the church would pray for you. And I think that is the most theologically abusive use of power I've ever seen. this certain church is of a more evangelical persuasion, and that really has very little to do with it, though they believe strongly in the power of prayer, and so do I, but I reflected on that and what that meant to present prayer like that and present a moment that could have been a moment for privacy, for tenderness, and for healing, like in such a public forum where prayer was put in such a dynamic of power. And I think that's a real cautionary tale to the rest of the church and the body of Christ at large, that when we look at situations like the situation of those dealing with depression and deep darkness, or the situation in Missouri right now near St. Louis, that we really need to come at things from a position of prayer, from a position of tenderness, and from a position of we are God's only witness to gentleness in this world, and that when the rest of the culture around us is screaming solutions, and even if they're good solutions, when they're screamed and when they are brought to the table with such harshness, they're not done in the Spirit of God. So we really need to walk in humility and offer people understanding, grace, and love and gentleness in the way that Christ would. And I think if we do that, we have a chance to really say something counter to what the culture is saying, which are largely messages based on noise, violence, and shame. So I would call the church to be very aware of its, of whether it is seeking to dwell in the house of the Lord from a position of compassion, a position of receiving the gift of Christ, or whether we use even the good things we have been given and the ability to speak to the world with pain to cultivate our own power and prestige. That's been my prayer for today, and I ask you to join me in that as well. Thanks. Blessings, guys.